Avengers! Assemble.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Excelsior, the world's #1 Marvel's Avengers podcast. I'm your director, Christian Buckley, as always, back again, joined with the Apex legend, Jack Martin.
Excelsior, Christian. How you been? How have you been enjoying that PS5, and how is Kevin Diaz's reaction to it?
Yes, this is great actually. For those that aren't familiar, I also host the JoyClicks Gamescast with Kevin, general video games show, and I have been anti-PS5 for quite a long time. I think that console came out way too early. Even still, from our discussion before this show, Jack, might even make a case that it's still out too early. But
Yep.
It's been cool. It makes Avengers run a lot faster. Barely any loading times on that game, Jack.
Yeah, that
nice.
is huge for us for this show.
Yeah, so I ordered it Monday, just like on a whim, and expected it to get here later this week, and I record with Kevin on Wednesdays. So Wednesday morning, I checked the tracking thing, and I was like, hey, it's going to get here today. And I was like, okay. And I was keeping it a secret from Kevin, because I've been downplaying this thing forever. And when the recording started, I was like, hey, just so you know, I might have to go sign for a package during the show, so just like cover. And it happened. It actually got delivered during the show. So brought it into my room, unpacked the thing. He was still covering for me for like 10 minutes on the recording. And I came back up, I was like, hey, sorry, it was a big thing. And then when we resumed the recording, I took a selfie with the box and sent it to him. And he was like just going off about some stupid game thing we were talking about, the reaction hit like lightning. So
That's awesome. Now, how did you even order it? Because I know it's still difficult to come by these days.
So for as long as I can remember, I've had Wario64 notifications on my phone. I got a lot of notifications on my phone because that account tweets constantly.
Yeah, it's like distracting at points where it's like this random like Eastern game is out on sale for $2. I'm like, I've never heard of this.
Yeah, but I was working at my desk and I saw it was like PS5 available through PS Direct. I was like, maybe let me see if I get in, because ever since Summer Game Fest this year, and the fact that Spider-Man 2 is next year, I was like, I should have a PS5 by March at the latest, because big Resident Evil fan, RE4. And I got in pretty quickly, and the PS5 disc, Sans Horizon, was available. So I was like, okay, yeah, why not? Why don't we do it? I'll put on my PlayStation credit card. I'll get PlayStation points. I'll feed into the ecosystem. And yeah.
That's great to hear. You're saving yourself some trouble with that Horizon game. I gotta be honest, I'm anti-Horizon at this point. I think you and I are both on that train.
Yeah.
I don't hate the game. It's just like, it's a Ubisoft game. Let's be real.
Yeah, and I like Ubisoft games. I played Brotherhood a couple months ago for the third time probably, and I loved it still. But yeah, I can only take so much, you know?
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm pretty, open world games in general, I'm pretty tapped out of, but those particular games, and it just feels like it wasn't really that big of a sequel. I think that game's very overhyped. I would gladly give Elden Ring the game of the year for a game I didn't really enjoy all that much in Elden Ring compared to Horizon. That quickly became a podcast game.
I will remember that when we do our GOTY talks at the end of the year, Jack. I'll bring that up again. I'll give you the receipt and you can co-sign it.
Yes. Oh yeah, if Kevin tries to make Horizon the game of the year, we're blocking that.
Oof. We'll get to the Avengers stuff in a second, but I did bring up to him during the same recording, because we did GOTY so far. I asked him if anything would like dethrone Horizon, because that's his current GOTY. And we talked for like 15-20 minutes, and I was like, you don't think like Last of Us Part 1's gonna do it? And then he was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. So I was kind of being facetious about it, but like,
yeah. And yeah, the 2013 game. And God of War Ragnarok, which is not releasing this year.
Yeah. But you know what is releasing this year, Jack?
What's that?
Maybe another Marvel's Avengers hero, because we got another one in the past week or so. Just this week, actually. And looks like probably going to get another one this year, based off of some comments we'll get into. But Avengers is having some stuff going on in the game. We are, of course, here to reconvene, discuss what's going on in Marvel's Avengers, what's new, impressions on the new hero, the mighty Thor, Jane Foster, and later in the show, catch up on Ms. Marvel. So, why don't we just dive into Fury's report? A lot of stuff going on right now. We'll save the Jane talk for the end because let's just all pack it together in one spot. So, first up, to celebrate the birth of the United States, like we all want to do right now, Captain America Cosmetics, 50% off from now until July 8th. That is running through July 4th, which is Independence Day in the US. Alongside that, Corrupted Vibranium is running until July 7th. And there's also a unit bonus for completing Villain Sector Chains, which is the new... I'll stop saying it's new in like a week or two, because this has been implemented for about a month or so now, but the new way to engage with event quests in the game and weeklies and things like that. So you'll be able to get boosted units from the 30th of June when we're recording this episode and the 7th of July. So fun stuff going on for sales and bonuses in this Avengers game, Jack.
Sure. Very exciting. I'm through the roof.
There hasn't been, I don't think, any brand new skins. If there were, they weren't that memorable. But the one that is there this week is the iconic Mighty Thor Jane Foster skin. The one that I always think of when I think of Jane Thor is from, I think, her debut, the Thor #1 that she took over in. And it's got the like the black eyes, like Darth Vader lenses basically on the Thor helmet for her.
Yeah, this is pretty sweet. Kind of surprised this isn't like, you know how like Spider-Man got his like iconic look, and like you can just get that. I'm surprised you couldn't just earn this after doing like her whole whatever like quest line it is, similar to Spider-Man. It's interesting to me that this is in the marketplace. I would have expected this to be earnable, and then like the MCU Thor skin would be the first marketplace skin. So that's an interesting choice here.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, she's been in the comics long enough, similar to Kamala, that they can pull from stuff in the comics. I think when we got the game, though, most of Kamala's comic fits were earnable in game because, as we know now with cosmetics and Avengers, they've kind of shifted to occasionally doing comics, consistently doing MCU stuff. So yeah, I am surprised that, considering how close it is to the launch of the film, like I imagine the MCU Jane skin will be featured next week, maybe the week after. But yeah, looking good. I'm with you. I'm surprised that it's not the questline earnable thing. And I haven't messed with the questline much, but I don't recall seeing a iconic outfit earnable for Jane.
Yeah, I'll have to pick your brain about that because I didn't even get a chance to play with Jane yet.
Yeah. So that is the marketplace and what's new in the game. So let's just get into updates. There is a lot of things that are going on with the recent patch. Lots of tweaks, lots of fixes. I skimmed, nothing major. We'll see how things play out balance-wise in the future, but I don't recall any previous patch like creating huge problems in recent memory, at least. So let's just get into the stark realities. That is Jane Foster. She's here. She's arrived. The first new hero of 2022.
Christian, I want to hear your thoughts on this. But I've also heard some very negative things. And not like in how she plays, but I watched, first of all, I didn't really even like watch the War Table. I like watched a little bit of it before it came out. Before Jane came out, I think it was like earlier this week. And the like to dislike ratio was not good.
Really?
Which was kind of surprising. I feel like people would just not care, or those that would watch it would be like, oh, this is cool. But it was like completely dislike heavy. And then Paul Tassi, who's like I guess not even one of the few journalists covering this game anymore because he kind of dipped out recently. Was saying that he wasn't like this wouldn't bring him back into the game. So I feel like more so than any of the other heroes, like there's been a lot of negativity. Not even like with how she plays, just like I suppose the state of the game and like where we find ourselves now that Jane has entered Marvel's Avengers. So that was an interesting sort of prelude to Jane joining the game.
So similar to you, I didn't watch the promotional material for this, considering it was so close. We had a week off, and it was like my brain wasn't focused on Avengers stuff, and I was like, well, the next time we record, I'm gonna have been able to play as Jane, so why would I just watch the promotional material? It's gonna be irrelevant. So I haven't watched that, but I have spent a little bit of time. I wouldn't say enough, but I've spent a good, not a good amount of time either. I gave it like a half hour in learning some of her abilities and what's unique about her as somebody who mains Thor. A couple things that surprised me out the gate. I did remember, I think last week they released that comic book Spider-Man style, infamous style motion comic, right?
Yeah, that was cool.
That did not appear for me in game. I don't know if I had to like trigger something for that to happen, but I did not see that. So I'm going to have to go back to that video and watch it because I was saving that for when I actually sat down to play the character.
Interesting. So how like did they introduce her?
I loaded the game up. She was on the homepage with the whole team shot. I loaded up the Avengers Initiative. I got just a couple updates on things I missed. And then I walked up to a war table, selected a mission, and I could choose her.
No way.
Yeah.
That's weird. Usually, there's like at least with the Spider-Man one probably had the least fanfare. Like what you said, you'd start up the game and then you got that motion comic. I feel like maybe that is supposed to happen, but it's not for whatever reason. It didn't happen for you because that would be really bizarre if you can just like load up the game and then go to the character switcher on like the helicarrier and just there's Jane. Like usually there's like a bit of like introduction to it.
Yeah. And I've only loaded the game up once, and there was stuff from the previous update. So, like, I loaded it in. The first thing I got was a Fury cutscene because as I've said, I've not played this game in like a couple months. So, I got the Fury cutscene when I loaded in, and then I walked up to the war table and I could select Jane. So maybe there was some weird canceling out of getting the Fury cutscene and like that negating the Jane cutscene for me. I can maybe see that be a possibility. So if I load the game up again and get it, I'll know why. But if it's not in the game, that is surprising to me because like they did it, they went through the effort, and I do like the motion comic animation they did for Spider-Man. So I was excited to see they did one for Jane as well. But I still haven't seen it. So.
Yeah, that's odd. I'll have to report back if I play Jane within the next week because maybe that was the case.
Yeah, but as far as she plays, I wanted to get a good sense. She's level 1, power level 0, I think, right? So I'm starting from nothing, so I can't load into anything. I'm too low of a power level, so I'm like, okay, let me go over to the war table, go to the helicarrier, I'll pull up a harm room, and I'll just get a sense of her abilities, I'll do her training session. And again, unless I fucked up, unless this is me, she doesn't have a training session either.
Really?
Yeah.
How am I going to farm all those challenge points?
I don't know. So I was like, I didn't want to risk it because I was like, I don't have a ton of time free right now. I want to just try Jane. So I didn't want to like load into Thor's and see if I could select Jane. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to try it or risk that. So I was like, okay, I'll just do a custom harm room. And that's where I spent my time with Jane because I could not load into anything. Like I couldn't do and we're back. I couldn't just do a roam around thing because I'm just too low power level. But off the rip, she's fun because she plays like Thor. I don't have any skills unlocked because I couldn't progress really based off of the time I had, and I was doing custom hard rooms, which don't give you XP. But her basic kit, in terms of movement maneuverability, she definitely feels faster than Thor, which I like. Just as sort of a alternate, where I do enjoy how Thor is just this like bulky tank who deals heavy damage, and I like the pace that he moves at. But if anybody was ever frustrated by the power to speed ratio of Thor, they'll probably enjoy Jane a lot more. She has a vault, and Thor doesn't have that. The pacing of her combat, like her square attacks and triangle attacks, are faster hits, but they feel like you can't mash them as heavily. Like her melee sort of is a bit does a bit of range damage in terms of I'll hit square and then instead of just hitting, she'll usually like toss it a little bit and like a mini boomerang, maybe like a foot out. So she's doing flippy dippy tricks with that hammer. So all the animations are cool and very distinct from Thor. So she feels visually different. Her L1 is Warrior's Fury. Her R1 is God Blast. So that's the same. But her
Oh,
ultimate
she has
ability.
the same L1 and R1.
Yeah, and I haven't messed with the skill tree variants, right? Because you know how with
Right.
some of the characters you can like slightly change the visual and practical effects of those abilities. So those could be distinct from Thor, the way that some of Kate's crossover was distinct from Clint. But her ultimate ability, I'm forgetting if it's called like the ultimate weapon or the god weapon. Basically, Mjolnir will act similar to Hawkeye with his ultimate, where Mjolnir becomes like AI controlled and will just zoom around the map in like a circumference based around where you are. Pretty wide. Like it's not immediately in your surroundings. Mjolnir will just fly around, take out enemies using the Odin Force lightning damage, but you will also get a replacement weapon. I'm not familiar with what the weapon. It's like this gold mace looking thing that people said was from the comics, and that functions as Mjolnir would. So like you have Mjolnir Prime doing damage just across the map everywhere, and then this gold, essentially Mjolnir clone, able to have access to your entire kit. So like range damage, throwing it, the combos and all that. So it's pretty cool. I imagine you can do a really good DPS build with that, but unique from Thor, definitely lasts longer than the Bifrost. But those are the big immediate differences. And like I said, I haven't had a chance to go through the skill trees. Looking at some of the combos she has, though, in the basic skill tree, there are some distinct ones. Again, much more focused on mobility, closing gaps, lots of kicks, lots of slides, things like that that Thor doesn't do. So,
Cool. Yeah, definitely excited to try. You and I both like playing as Thor, so it seems like a pretty natural step for us. Seems like she, like maybe just it's just all the energy and conversations around this game right now, but it seems like this is like the least consequential character added, especially since she doesn't have an operation. Like Spider-Man obviously didn't, but it's Spider-Man's like one of the most beloved superheroes of all time, so I feel like people definitely responded to that in a way, but I feel like for the most part, Spider-Man like got a good enough press from that. But it seems like it's kind of just unfortunate. Like if Jane released maybe as like the first character, I feel like people wouldn't be giving it a lot of negativity as much as they are right now. But I think it's just more so the state of the game, and this is the first piece of content we've had in 6 months, and it's like still kind of lackluster without the operation and things like that. So I don't know. It's a little unfortunate. Like there's nothing really pulling me to. I think like what Paul Tassi said in his article, like there's nothing really pulling me into the game alongside Jane to really sink my teeth into. It's just, do I want to level up a character to level 50 and do a gear grind for 150 just with all the same content we've been playing forever? That's not really something I want to do right now, but maybe in conjunction with the cloning lab that's happening and things like that, maybe that will be the time to do it. But right now, it's kind of hard to be motivated to jump into the game right now.
Yeah, I understand that. Part of the reason that I was eager to get in was because I did get the PS5, right? And Avengers loading that up on my PS4 Pro is like a task.
It's so different, dude. Like you just jump into the game.
Yeah, so for that reason, that was part of the motivation in addition to Jane dropping and having to have some experience with her for the podcast, right? But I completely understand that and get that. I don't think Jane will convince anybody who isn't already an Avengers fan to become an Avengers fan suddenly. Clearly, I don't think Jane is either going to be this big push to get fans to return to the game, but I think I understand the reason they did Jane, right? Because with how successful, I guess, on the back end monetarily this game has become once they started embracing the MCU rather than pushing it away. I imagine they saw the development roadmap ahead of them when that could line up with potentially a movie like Thor: Love and Thunder, and deciding to do that to see if that would help the game, right? Because I remember even Greg Miller talked about this on either his like How to Save Avengers video or literally any time he's talked about the game. But like, he's like, oh yeah, I left. I think he said he left Shang-Chi and he was like, on the way home, man, I'd love to just hop into Avengers and play as Shang-Chi right now. And they work with him. Maybe they listened to that and they figured that that would be a good thing to try, you know?
Yeah, definitely. It seems like the synergy with the MCU is something they have been embracing for a little bit, and it's great now that there's like whole characters being released around the same time as things. And now with Ms. Marvel, we have like her MCU suit and things like that, so that's cool. Yeah, it's just the matter of having like a full roster to really go alongside the MCU, which I'm sure is a quite the challenge.
Yeah. So when it comes to the future with Jane, I can't imagine myself like investing in wanting to super level up or get a 5150 character or 5175 at this point. Like, I think that time and energy I would rather spend on Thor getting to 175 and getting more champion XP because I've already spent so much time with Thor, and I personally, outside of just my enjoyment of the game, would not really have a reason to invest in Jane. I'll definitely mess with her a little more. I'll try and get her to a place where I can load into a mission and just see how she plays with a team or in real time. But yeah, I understand people who are frustrated with this. However, I do think it's another good, well functioning, well playing character with a cool ultimate that I hope in maybe a week or two, the super hardcore will be able to share some very unique new builds centered around her. Because again, that'll come in handy when slash if we get other like high level content, right? So if Jane can do Thor's damage, but because of this perk on this specific gear item she can only get, then maybe she'll be even great as a healer or something, you know? So the jury's still out on that front, but in terms of the excitement level, I think what you brought up is the tone that a lot of people have right now with this.
Yeah, and something always to praise about this game is like this is completely free, which I think is great. They've been doing that ever since the game launched. Like they released a whole ass expansion that was free, and obviously now we're getting like character drops that are just free and available with an update. So that's always great.
Yeah, definitely. In terms of the future of the game, though, there were a couple things that I found curious around the Jane Foster launch. Specifically, Brian Wagner, who is a dev that I follow on Twitter, working at Crystal. A couple things stood out to me. One was a general, like, a tweet that you could tell had probably some frustration about the leaking of this game, the extensive leaks of this game. Basically, the gist of that was saying that the next hero we're getting in the game is not who we think it is. Thoughts on that, Jack?
So, there's like two heroes I would think would be next. Like we were saying earlier with like the MCU synergy and just the leaks that have happened. She-Hulk seems like the next in line, or Captain Marvel with a expansion that I don't know if that has been like rumored, leaked, or just the next evolution that you would expect for an expansion. But we and I think everyone else has sort of run with that. Those are kind of the characters I would think. Where are you thinking?
Yeah, I would also think She-Hulk or I don't know. I honestly don't know because I remember earlier this year the speculation was like, oh, is it Shuri? Is it it was Yelena? But
True, yeah.
the female clone ended up being Jane, so I don't know if those were just speculation. But we've heard like Rhodey, we've heard Winter Soldier, we've heard a list of other characters, right? And I'm with you. I think it is bonkers that considering how important Carol Danvers is to Kamala Khan's origins, and Kamala Khan was the main character of that game, that we still haven't seen her. So between that and the fact that when I loaded this game up, Fury once again brought up the incoming Kree invasion. I was like, damn, we're really still talking about this, so they better do something with it. Like they wouldn't keep bringing it up if it was not going to happen, right?
Yeah. It kind of has to.
Yeah. So I I think you're right. I think it would either be Carol or She-Hulk. But I think the general consensus and thought amongst the community online is that She-Hulk would be next, right? Over Carol.
Yeah, it seems like it would probably be a smaller release like Jane. And like the voice actress has even said she's She-Hulk, like basically without saying it. So like that's happening at some point, unless they do a complete change and don't use that. But like she's done voice lines and everything for She-Hulk, so that's has to be coming soon, I would imagine.
Yeah, you would hope, right?
And like with She-Hulk's in the fall, like the movie or the show.
August.
Oh yeah, so I would expect. I'm confused. Like I would be really surprised if She-Hulk is not next. Like Jane comes out at the end of June, basically early July. I would not expect another character in July, like because they've done nothing really to make me think a whole new character would release a month after a brand new one, and then another character releasing in August. That seems like that would be a lot.
Yeah. So maybe they can time it to have She-Hulk ready for the finale of the show. Maybe.
Yeah,
But yeah, if it is not She-Hulk, and this is truth, I'll be surprised. I'll be very, very surprised. But the other thing that was teased, because again, we was tweeting a bunch about just the game in general around launch. Somebody added him and said, like, can you please add the open world large patrol zones to the game already or something like that? Quote tweeted it with just a smiley face. So again, I feel like that means it's in development, right? If you're a dev that can't say everything.
yeah. I would also say that's probably something that could drop anytime. Like next week, they could be like, "Oh yeah, that's a thing now. Go to the war table and just do it." Like it's not that big a thing, really. I'm not discounting like how much development that would take because I don't know and I don't understand, but it's not something like, "Oh, patrol zones are here. You gotta get in this game." It's just something that could release in a war table blog.
Yeah. So eyes will be peeled in the future for that. But Avengers, you live another day.
I guess so.
What's very funny, Jack, before we get into Meanwhile, we'll start with this. Meanwhile, news alert. Marvel just got $10 out of me because I forgot to cancel my Marvel Unlimited subscription free trial from Game Pass. So I had to cancel that real quick. But I guess I'll try and read some comics this month, even though I haven't for the last two. But
Yeah, I need to get. I've been reading the Star Wars. I mean, maybe you could read this. Can you read the Star Wars Marvel comics?
I think I can.
All right. Yeah, I just started the 2015 run, and it's pretty good. It's all like Han, Luke, and Leia between episode 4 and 5. I'm enjoying it so far. I think I'm 7 issues in. It's like split up in arcs so far. So one was about like the very first one is about them destroying like the biggest weapons factory in the galaxy, and they have like a run in with Darth Vader. And it's like, oh, would this break canon? And they do like smart ways of making sure it fits nicely and nothing is like too serious, but there's some cool moments in it. So it's pretty good so far.
Very nice. Yeah, I'll probably mess with that. I'll probably get back to reading the Daredevil run that I like a lot. I just I was really into it the first like 2 days I subbed, and then I did not touch it for 3 months. So yeah.
Yeah. When do you read comics? Because like time of day. Because I love reading them at night. Helps me fall asleep like so easily.
I'd say evening, like 6 or 7. You know,
With a
maybe
fine
like
glass
before.
of wine.
Yeah, before dinner, after dinner, maybe read a couple, then hop on, watch a show, play a game. You know,
Yeah, that's a good time to do it.
yeah. So maybe I should use this opportune robbing of my funds to get caught up on Doctor Doom, Jack,
Why is that?
because apparently there's a project coming for Doctor Doom that Howard Stern is involved in.
This sounds horrible.
So, for those that aren't familiar, Howard Stern, radio host for Sirius XM, I think that's the thing he's on. I don't know how long that man has been working. I remember learning of him from America's Got Talent, I think.
Yep.
And then one of the recent 9/11 anniversaries, I remember somebody posted an episode of his show, and I was like, he was around then?
Oh,
So,
he's been around since at least the 80s.
yeah. So, you would think that a host of a radio show for that long would know how to not slip up, but did you hear the source of how this happened, how this rumor came to light?
I just saw it was on his show, wasn't it?
It was. But his mic was still hot when the ads were running.
Oh, you're kidding me.
So there's excerpts I saw on Twitter. There's excerpts for whoever's like the sponsor of his show running their ad, and underneath he was like, "Yeah, tell Feige this thing." He's like, "The one thing I'm not excited is for the schedule. It's gonna fucking suck." And he's like, "I'm doing some Doctor Doom project for them." I'm paraphrasing. That wasn't the exact phrasing of it, but like, yeah, he's working on a Doctor Doom project this summer.
That
I don't know.
That's unbelievable. First of all, I hate Howard Stern.
Yeah.
He's miserable to listen
Yeah.
to. I don't understand how millions of people listen to him. Well, I guess millions of people are probably miserable, so
Yeah.
that probably makes sense. But don't like him. Confused as to what this project is like. And I don't know. When I think Doctor Doom, not sure I think Howard Stern. So that's a weird casting. If like I guess like he didn't say he is Doctor Doom, but I guess that's sort of top of mind when you leak that
Right.
that he would play the character. But like, would this be for the Fantastic Four movie? Would this be for? I know some people were throwing out like an animated thing. I'm unsure, and obviously we should be because we're not really supposed to know about this. But yeah. It's a weird piece of news.
We also know that Marvel's gotten into radio dramas right? Like they do those podcast narrative series. Like there's the Wolverine one. There's I think like Old Man Star Lord was a podcast narrative drama. So could be that. You know, he's a radio host. Maybe that's the thing he's working on. But yeah, this is certainly an interesting thing. We've seen rolling all the way back to phase one of the MCU. Another person that I don't like, Bill O'Reilly was in Iron Man, I think, or Iron Man 2.
Yes, as Bill O'Reilly, right?
Yeah. So maybe it's that. Maybe Doctor Doom. I actually don't. Oh, Victor Von Doom. That's his name. Maybe Victor Von Doom, the scientist, goes on the Howard Stern show, like a Joe Rogan episode
Yeah,
style thing, and maybe
that on.
that's it.
I think you probably nailed it. That makes sense. Because like he's acted, but in the movie Private Parts, but he was playing himself, so he's probably pretty good at that. So I would imagine he's probably gonna do that. I think you're probably right. He will definitely, and I really don't like when shows. The Boys does this, and I like The Boys enough, but I hate when it like references like real world things. That's just so. There's something so weird about that. I like movies and shows being divorced from reality. So like whenever they bring on like what you said, like Bill O'Reilly, or like seeing like Anderson Cooper on the news, I'm like, this is weird. Just like have your own fake journalist or radio show. Um, I don't know. Yeah, I hope he does not play a major role because don't like him.
Yeah. I. It's funny though because the first 30 minutes of reading that I was like, is he actually Doctor Doom? And then I like thought about it and I was like, no, he's gonna like interview him or something.
Yeah, that's a good call.
But curious, what if Doctor Doom? Presumably, I'm thinking he's gonna be the next Thanos. I know a lot of people think it's gonna be Kang, but if Doctor Doom is gonna be a huge player moving forward in the MCU, could you see Doctor Doom introduced through a standalone project?
That'd be interesting. Because Thanos was introduced in a variety of ways at the end of Avengers and then through Guardians of the Galaxy before like finally coming out. That could be interesting, and it could lead to like being inside the head more of the villain, which I think is an interesting possibility. So if they do end up using that route, I think that could be very interesting to like sort of cheer on, kind of like Joker style in a way, like cheer on the villain in a way, or sort of root for them in some ways, and then later on get the hero versus villain story, and like there's no real villain because you're kind of on their side in a way. I think that's a good way of doing things.
Yeah, and typically Marvel Studios hasn't done stuff like that before, but there are these rumors floating around about the Thunderbolts, right? Be like getting movement on that project. In addition to that, there's also Loki, who was redeemed, has his own series. So I wouldn't write it off that there could be a Doctor Doom thing, but yeah, we will certainly see, presumably in the near future. But uh, tangentially talking about Doctor Doom casting, I don't know if you saw this quote either, but there was basically something that sent the Krasinski stands into a panic lately about
No,
this Reed Richards casting.
what was this?
Basically, I forget who said this. I don't think it was Feige, but let me look and see if I can find a name for this. But the gist of it was that, like, they were saying, oh, we knew the fans wanted this to
Oh, this
be...
was this was Sam
the
Raimi,
writer?
I believe.
Okay. Yeah, so it was basically a possibility you and I talked about in our multiverse review. It was an opportunity to make a fan dream a reality, and might not mean that he is our Reed Richards in 616 MCU stuff.
Yeah, I think that was essentially saying like we had the opportunity to like do the fan casting, so we took it. And yeah, it seems like for me though, that just seems like definitely with the fan cast, like what they said, they wanted to do the fan casting and they were able to do that. I still think there's a big possibility he could be that character if he wants to be in the MCU. But I think it's probably largely up to him rather than, well, obviously the Kevin Feige and Marvel will have their decision, but I feel like John Krasinski is like kind of perfect for that. It seems, and if he wants it, he probably can get it.
Yeah. The other holdup I think at this point is I feel like if that was the case, there would be a tweet by now. You know.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like they don't have the rest of the Fantastic Four yet, so that's probably. I feel like we'll hear about this soon, and we'll talk about that news piece soon enough. But I feel like we'll hear about this soon. I feel like we'll know the Fantastic Four by the end of the summer.
I agree. And presumably so does the MCU and Feige and Marvel because Kevin Feige has outwardly said that the future of the MCU will be revealed soon. You and I were discussing this a little bit before recording. Comic-Con, they are making their triumphant return to Hall H this year, middle of July, the 21st through the 24th. So I think this will be the old school Feige on a stage, revealing logos on a timeline, and probably ending it with a big casting announcement like with the Avengers all coming out on stage. I think that's what we'll get, and the Fantastic Four will be revealed on that stage, is my guess.
Yes, I agree. I think if Fantastic Four isn't the last Phase 4 movie, which I think it will be, I think we'll get that. I just want like the rest of the schedule for Phase 4. Like I want to know what the last thing is. And then they could be like, "Oh yeah, Phase 5 will be like Blade and whatever like other projects that we announced earlier, probably too soon." But yeah, definitely want to know what we're leading up to for Phase 4. And I still think like what we're leading up to is probably like maybe more probably more has more stakes than the Avengers did in a way, because I think we're building up to a lot with like Kang and things like that potentially. So that'll be interesting, but like it's still a lead up phase to 5 and 6, I think.
Yeah, I'm curious to see the way they present the future, right? Because a common critique of Phase 4, which I don't necessarily agree with, but I see where people are coming from, is that nothing feels connected. I think this is like we've talked about before, like with the sports team, it's a rebuilding year. It's a structuring year of introducing all these new characters, updating our veterans. Where are they at? Are they passing a torch or not? And maybe towards the end of this phase, we get. Honestly, I don't even know if we're gonna get that, Jack. I don't even know if we're gonna get a big finale for this phase. I think if this phase is about giving resolution to the veterans that didn't get in an endgame, setting up where familiar people are, and introducing new heroes, it makes a lot of sense to end this phase, if that's the job, with Fantastic Four being the new introduced big face team, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if we get like a big team up. I don't even know what that would look like. That seems like it's too many characters.
Yeah. And I think Feige's a smart man, right? I think he realizes that it's still a little too soon to do Avengers 5. And even bring it up. I think he can say, like, we're working on the next Avengers project, we're leading to it, and it's going to be a Phase 5 thing. And I think that will satiate people enough.
Yeah, I would honestly love a break from the Avengers. And I feel like that'd be a really great return, like after a whole phase. Because what? Last time we got Endgame was 2019. Yep. And I don't know, Avengers 5 would be like 2025 maybe. 24, probably 25. That would be. I would like that, honestly.
Yeah, I would too. Like, I think that would be a very smart move and a good move. And it allows these new characters the opportunity to breathe, become familiar, and get us to that level of accepting them stepping into the team name, where we could see other people step down, like Clint not gonna show up probably, right? Like Banner maybe in like a support scientist role. Like I think with the separation of those movies, growing more fond with characters like Yelena, Shang-Chi, we even known Sam and Bucky forever, but like Ms. Marvel even, right? I think when we eventually get to Avengers 5 and see those characters in the lead on the poster, people are excited about that and not like, oh, I wish Steve Rogers was back, you know?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, I think you're right. I think it's this phase is just introducing a lot of new characters,
mm-hmm,
and probably at the end getting Fantastic Four, which is again new characters for the MCU.
mm-hmm.
That's probably the lead up, and then we can do Avengers later.
Yeah, I could see a world where Fantastic Four is the finale, and at some point they introduce some threat, like maybe Galactus. That would make sense as the post credits, right? And then at the end of Phase 6, that's when Galactus is here, and we have the big end game part 2, right?
True. I
So
don't even know what the state of the Avengers is right now.
it's
Like who's
Sam and
yeah,
Rhodey, I
yeah, right.
think, and Carol,
And
but she's never there. She never shows up.
yeah, exactly. So
So
yeah, I think it'd be great to have some breathing room and then come back when it's needed.
are you enthusiastic about the future right now, knowing that we're going to learn about it soon and where we're at right now?
I am now that he said that because I was somewhat on the side of like where are we going. I liked Phase 4 has been hit or miss for me. Like I liked dealing with the characters that we don't see very much, like Wanda and Loki, like really getting inside their minds. Um, and I especially really like Ms. Marvel as like a new hero, and like I'm interested to see future projects with her. But then there are shows like Moon Knight that just didn't really hit with me, and I'm not really excited to see him going forward. Like I'd rather have like a new direction with that character than that show. And like Eternals, I straight up just don't want to see ever again. Um, so I was a little mixed, but now that Kevin Feige is saying that we're gonna like actually have the timeline sort of set in stone and like what we can expect coming up soon, has me a little more reassured.
Yeah. So we will have answers soon enough. Probably have some casting. I'm hoping at least one project that none of us expected or none of us heard about, right? Because I know like Midnight Suns has been rumored also between like Blade and Moon Knight, but
Do you think
what?
any X-Men talk?
That's what I was gonna say. I was gonna say, imagine he just drops X Men. Like it's coming in like 28, but like we are building up X Men right now.
Yep. Yeah, I mean they had the X-Men animated show, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
That's like coming back. Um, but yeah, no like live action or even like that seems the animated show doesn't even seem like it's in the MCU. Maybe it is, but it
I
doesn't
doubt
feel
it.
like yeah, and it doesn't feel like wholly new because it's a continuation of an old show. So yeah, I feel like they could totally do like a Blade thing and be like one more thing. We're doing the X-Men, obviously, and show a logo. That's probably what we get.
I think if they do that, they will announce like a sub Kevin Feige lead. Remember how like a long time ago, pre-firing, it was like, oh, James Gunn is gonna oversee all the cosmic stuff
Yeah,
in Marvel. I think they'll do that for the X Men because that roster, that pool to draw from is just so extensive that I can't imagine Kevin Feige can juggle that in addition to what he's already doing
true.
fully. So maybe we get an announcement like that, like, hey, this person is gonna be fully in charge of the X Men. We're gonna be working together extensively, but look forward to it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't think we get like casting. I don't think he's like, oh yeah, Patrick Stewart's back or
Carl Urban walks out.
Daniel Radcliffe walks out.
Oh, dude, that would be so hype. I know people have talked about that. I'd be all on. I love Daniel Radcliffe. He's amazing.
He's my choice. He would be absolutely my choice. I've also seen people talk about like for Wolverine, just the shoes you have are so big. Cast an unknown actor, and I think I can get with that. I think that could be probably a good call.
Yeah, I'm usually always on board with unknown actors because I'm like, I have no expectations going into this, so I'm just really stoked to see what you do with it. So sure.
Yeah, yeah, we'll see. I'm excited to learn more about that in the future. But you know what I'm not excited to learn more about in the future, Jack?
What's that?
You brought up animated shows. There was this whole fiasco about What If Season 2. Disney Plus in the Netherlands were saying, Season 2, premiering July. Never mind, no it's not. And that's the story. Do you think it's coming this summer? Do you think it's going to be a thing?
I don't know. That's a show I don't really care about, and that's a show. I know you and Mike were talking about this on Jedi Nights with Kenobi. But that is definitely a show that needs to release all at once. Like, don't drip it out week by week because just get it over with, man. What If Season 1 did not live up to the name? So I hope What If Season 2 does. And, like, it's just really boring art style. There's so much about the show I don't like. But yeah, I think they mentioned 2022, so I could see, I mean, if She-Hulk is coming out in August, I feel like they would have announced a July release. So maybe in the fall. September. It feels like something's in September, though, but I can't think.
I mean,
What would
She Hulk will be premiering in September, and Bad Batch is starting in September, I know, and that's animation, so I don't know
Yeah.
if they clog that, but
Who knows?
I'll watch the second part of the Marvel Zombies thing because that was the best. Well, T'Challa Star Lord was the best, but
Yeah.
Marvel Zombies I wanted more out of because that's the one that ended on a cliffhanger, right?
Yep. Sure did.
Yeah. So we'll see what's in store in the multiverse. But last piece of news. Again, looking at the picture of what's ahead. Armor Wars, the show starring Don Cheadle, will begin filming this fall. Accidentally wrote next, but it is this fall. This
Okay.
fall, the show begins filming.
So
Are you looking forward to this?
Yeah, I am. I really do like Rhodey a lot. And I feel like picking up on like the lineage, like we picked up on the lineage of Captain America with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So picking up on the lineage with Iron Man, especially like after Endgame, would be really interesting. And I think Falcon and the Winter Soldier sort of teed up Armor Wars. A lot of people are saying, with the end with Agent, forgetting her name. You know who I'm talking about?
Um,
She's like the weapons
Dreyfus?
dealer. No. It was she played
Agent 13, Sharon.
yeah, Sharon. It seems like people were thinking that tees up Armor Wars, so that'll be a somewhat interesting thread to go on. But yeah, I'm excited. This seems like if it's filming in the fall, it would come out 2023 sometime, right?
Yeah, presumably, probably next summer, I would think. I could see, considering it's dealing with Iron Man Legacy, I could maybe see it drop in May because that's when all the Iron Man movies used to drop. But yeah, that is one that I'm looking forward to because I am very curious to get deeper in the thought process of Rhodey, who is a character I've always liked, but seeing him deal with the weight of his best friend's actions, right? Like in Iron Man 2, when we first met Don Cheadle's Rhodey, he's introduced as like trying to deal with the repercussions of Tony. So Armor War is dealing with that again, but solely resting on his decisions is interesting to me at least. So I'm curious about that one.
Yeah, and also, is it implied that there's just like loose Iron Man armor around that is just being like shopped around?
Yeah, it's either that or people are trying to like fill the void, which is again a very similar thing to Iron Man 2 with the hearings, right? Where they showcase
Right.
like all the people trying to do the copycats.
Yeah.
And I imagine that would also set up Ironheart, which is like the actual passing of the torch of the Iron Man legacy, and I think began with Riri Williams copycatting the Iron Man armor. So that's probably just going to be a backdoor for that too.
Interesting. Cool.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the current MCU Disney Plus show, Ms. Marvel. We have another 2 episodes to discuss, episodes 3 and 4. General vibe check, Jack. Are you still rocking with Ms. Marvel?
I am very much so. Um, I think episode 3 is probably my least favorite so far, but I still enjoyed it. Like I didn't dislike it at all. Um, I just think there was like the introduction of the like villain characters, them being like seemingly good and then turning bad. Like I thought was maybe a little rushed, but overall I mostly enjoyed it. And then episode 4 I really liked actually. This was
Mm-hmm.
this week's episode where they go to Pakistan, and it seems like this show is like completely done in the volume or like in indoor sets somewhere. Like I'm sure they didn't actually go across the country or across the world to film that, but it still felt like they were present somewhere, and they weren't in Jersey City. Like it feels wholly distinct. So I really liked it. I always am enjoying like Kamala interacting with her culture, and like I feel like they're doing that in such a good way. Yeah, I'm really enjoying the show, and it's like continuing to be good for me.
So they actually shot that in Bangkok, Thailand.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. But
Uh,
because I'm with you, I think like similar to the Jersey City stuff, it really does feel like the place instead of. I think Star Wars. I personally believe, at least, they use the volume really well, and maybe it's because it's made up places. It looks very convincing and feels authentic. But when Marvel has used it in the past, I haven't really been on board with it. And when we talked about Ms. Marvel just being so refreshing, that was a huge part of it. So I'm glad they're shooting on location still.
yeah, that's great. I honestly did not expect that.
Yeah, very, very cool. I was surprised, honestly, because I really loved episode 3, and I think I liked it more than episodes 1 and 2, maybe, just because like I really liked the theming of it, the fact that it was all focused around the wedding, and then it all broke down. As far as the villains go, I'm with you. I don't care about them.
No. Yeah,
That's the
exactly.
weak point of the show. Like most Marvel things, it's the villain. But even then, like Kamran having a bit of a soft spot and like not wanting to go along with it, I'm I think that's a unique element of the villain group, right? So I'll give them that in terms of the emotional stakes behind the villain team in this show. But yeah, as far as the whole like, oh, we need you to rip up a hole in the sky so we can get home or whatever they're gonna do, yeah,
Yeah.
it's whatever.
No, I'm with you. And something I disliked about episode 3 was I feel like a really big missed opportunity with the Bon Jovi song that they were using,
Hmm.
and the action just like did not go well with it, in my opinion. Like I feel like a lot of the Disney Plus action has just not really been good, and that sort of continues with this show. Um, and I would have loved like a really well edited like fight scene with "Living on a Prayer," and like it was I don't know, it was kind of just like it was kind of like they filmed the fight scene and they just threw "Living on a Prayer" on.
Sure. Yeah, there's definitely a disconnect there. I love that song anyway, so like I was just like, yeah, this is cool. But it's definitely tonally strange where Kamala is still like growing into her powers, and most of her combat in that was like slapsticky, not in like a bad way, but definitely strange to have that up against Living on a Prayer, which feels like it could be in like a Thor battle scene or something, right?
Right?
Like
Yeah.
I hear you for sure, but yeah, I did like it. But episode 4 I do think is better than episode 3 because we get a lot more emotional with Kamala's family, her lineage. The stuff with the red daggers was very interesting and pretty cool. So I've seen a lot of people saying there was a Shang-Chi reference. I missed it.
I think in episode 3 when it was like the flashback sequence,
Hmm.
the Ten Rings were in the temple that they were investigating. or like allusions to the Ten Rings were there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure though. And
Because
I feel like, do you know like where we left off with Shang-Chi at the very end, where they were like Wong was like investigating like the source of the power and saying there was like a ping or something. That seems like it might be related to this, just because they're both wearing jewelry. that's
sure.
that's my line of thought.
Yeah, that's a good point, right? Because Wong said he didn't recognize the inscriptions on the rings. I watched Shang-Chi like a week ago, so it's very fresh. But
Okay.
I think he saw like the markings we didn't recognize, and it was like the carbon dating of it said it was like over like 10,000 years old or something. And the connection that I was thinking when I was watching it was the way that that gentleman was describing the uh, the Nor realm, right? How
Mm-hmm.
it's like parallel to our own, like the upside down, reminded me of Tao Lo from Shang-Chi, like the village that his mother's from.
True. Yeah, that's a good point.
So I thought maybe that was it. Like maybe not they're from the same alternate dimension, but like another one on top of that.
Yeah.
So,
Interesting. Yeah, that's certainly possible.
but how are you feeling about Kamala's progression as a hero? Because we've been getting sort of like piecemeal pieces of the iconography, like the fists, the giant feet. Uh, she hasn't like embiggened yet, but shades of that I think. Getting like slowly assembling her costume. Do you
Yeah.
feel like it's reflecting her like emotional character arc well?
Yeah, I really liked in this episode. Um, she got like new clothes like from Pakistan, and she was wearing them like with her mask and all. And it's like, oh, this she's like starting to develop that costume.
Yeah.
And it's cool that like she was actually influenced by like her culture and like where her family's from, and she's like incorporating that into the suit, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, I really like that a lot. And I haven't read any opinion pieces about people who were concerned about the change just for what the comic book approached that feeling of like acceptance and identity for Kamala. But there was a TikTok creator I saw that was very critical of the change pre-show, who seems to be positive about its going on the last few episodes. So I'm certainly enjoying it. I think they're doing really interesting stuff. And I've seen even people with episode 4 talking about how they did not know about the partition in their history, which I only learned about very briefly, I think, in a history class in high school, about like Britain occupying India. Did you ever learn about that in your Catholic school education?
No, I don't think I ever did.
Yeah. So I think that's another positive of the show, just like really representing a different culture. And on Twitter, at least, I do see a lot of like people saying that it feels very refreshing and authentic to see their culture be represented this way. So I'm still loving the show. I think it's maybe their best period, I think.
Yeah, I definitely think it's up there. It definitely has like some of the bad trappings that a lot of Marvel projects and like what you mentioned, the villains, and it's not very interesting, but it's certainly the most unique in terms of like I'm surprised even with the like style of the show. It's like incredibly stylized with like the text messages popping up or just like how colorful it is because I don't know, but the Disney like the majority of Disney Plus shows, the MCU ones have been like really drab and
Yep.
like colorless. Like I know Kenobi is not really supposed to be a very colorful show, but that has like a very similar palette to like Moon Knight and like Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Like it seems like they didn't really do like color correction on any of those shows,
Yeah.
or if they did, it's just like let's put this weird filter over it. So it's refreshing that the show actually features color.
It's got texture.
Yeah, right.
So, how do you feel about the supporting cast? Because her friends, I feel like, are starting to, as most Marvel projects, fade into the background. I I appreciate that Bruno was like having kind of a like an in-world cutoff for appearing and like having an influence over the show. But yeah, how do you feel about just sort of like shelving the supporting cast?
Yeah, I really like Bruno and Nakia, and I think the one knock for this episode is them not being involved, which is obvious because they're in a completely different country. And that was the one thing in this episode I was like, did they just go like randomly on a school week? Like it's not summer, I don't think. They just go? Like that's a long trip. You're not going for a weekend. So that was a little bit odd to me. But no, I really liked them in the lead up to last episode, and now with Nakia knowing, like I'm interested to see where that goes.
Yeah, Damage Control definitely knows who Ms. Marvel is now, though, right?
E,
Like 100%, because
maybe.
Kamala is like where they were looking in Jersey.
Yeah.
She's around that area, and then Nightlight or Night Bright, whatever, shows up in Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
They can cross reference Jersey City residents that just went on a trip to Pakistan,
Right.
and she also took her mask off at the end of that fight in the last episode, which I was like, why?
I'll say I don't think her secret identity stays
Sure.
secret. Like I, I feel like the MCU has done that a lot with characters. That's just gonna be exposed, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I would hope not because I feel like with some of the like characters who in world are minors, it would make sense for them to have secret identities.
Mm-hmm.
Like we got back there with Peter. Uh, Kamala, I would like if she kept her secret identity because I think in the Avengers game also she makes a point of like still having to lead separate lives and like keep them separate. But yeah, I was very puzzled. Like when that fight was going on, I was like, "This is gonna be the episode 5 reveal of how they track her down and get her." Right? It's because she
Yeah.
took her mask off and they can just figure it out. But
Also, have we gotten like a hero with like a Robin esque from Batman style mask? Because that they're gonna have to do a lot of explaining if she keeps her secret identity and she's wearing like an eyepiece.
I don't think we have. Um, trying to think.
I feel like we haven't.
Like Bucky had the face mask and the goggles, but his face was also plastered all over the
Yeah,
world. Uh,
he at least had like the half mask.
yeah.
I
Like,
feel I don't think like no one really has secret identities in the MCU, right?
yeah,
Like Spider
and
Man's the only
man,
one.
every day or every time I think about that, at least, I just think about how like Robert Downey Jr. improved that line at the end of Iron Man and the repercussions that it had.
Was that an improv?
That was not in the script. He was like, "I'm just gonna say I am Iron Man. I feel like it would fit," and they're like,
No
"Yeah, why
way.
not? You're right."
I didn't know that. That's incredible.
And that set the tone. That's why that nobody has secret identities.
That is unbelievable. I really didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, unless that is an incorrect tidbit. I've heard that for like years. As like, oh, did you know?
Wow.
Yeah, but are there any other standout elements from these 2 episodes that we haven't touched on that you want to touch on?
No, not really. I think it's mostly been the show's mostly been consistent for me. Maybe like a slight dip in episode 3. I didn't like dislike it. It just didn't stick with me maybe as much as the other 2 episodes or the other 3. But yeah, no, I've really, and it's probably because of the villains, but I've really been enjoying the show so far. And we got 2 more, I think. So yeah, definitely excited to see the conclusion.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how it pans out the next couple weeks. I hope that there's an interesting twist with the villains, or maybe something with damage control being outside of what we expect it to be, right? I appreciate the way they're presenting damage control, because every time they show up, I'm just mad. I'm like, I
Right.
get these
Yeah.
cops out of here,
Yeah, exactly.
So hopefully they can do something interesting with that conflict if the main villains don't turn out to be. But yeah, I really enjoy it. hopefully, if it delivers in the last two episodes the way it has been so far, I could see it be my favorite, or maybe the best. WandaVision still has a special place, but that might just be because it was the first show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that this is firing on all cylinders. It's making me enjoy Marvel content again, honestly.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've had like a bit of like a lot of dips recently. So I think this is like this and like Doctor Strange have been like, oh, sweet, something refreshing.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree with you. Because like Moon Knight, I enjoyed, but I was like, okay, that was another one.
It felt like a real missed opportunity.
Yeah, and Hawkeye, I was like, that was another one. And some of last year, I felt the same way about other projects, but with this, I'm genuinely excited. Like, I'm upset that there's not going to be a seventh episode, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just very enjoyable, and I really like the cast, and I'm glad that we're going to get to see more Kamala relatively soon in the Marvels, but I hope this show gets a season 2, and I hope it's soon.
I hope every Disney Plus show gets a movie. Because
Yeah.
I'm like off the Disney Plus train, like completely.
I will say I think that this is the show that's the most enjoyable as a show that MCU's put out. Like, for me at least. Like, I don't want to rewatch pretty much anything. I could maybe see myself rewatching this, but just the fact of like the way that each episode exists, I think is just enjoyable opposed to these other ones where I would watch more of this if this is what it was. You know, like I
Sure.
would love it if it was a movie, but if it was a season 2, I wouldn't be disappointed the way I would be disappointed if it's like we have to sit through another 6 episodes of Moon Knight. Okay.
Yeah, I feel like this would be a good like 12 episode, 30-minute episode
Yeah.
show where it's like, oh, let's like, what's going on this week? That would be, I'd be totally fine with that. But so far, I'm mostly like, let's stick with the movies.
Yeah, I feel you on that. So I hope she gets both, honestly.
Yeah.
I hope she just gets a lot of stuff moving forward.
I agree.
We will be back, of course, next week to talk about episode 5 of Ms. Marvel, the penultimate episode. But until then, Jack, where can the agents of Excelsior find you?
Sure, you can find me on social media at Fascinated Jack. What about you, Christian?
You can find me on Twitter and TikTok at Shun2D2, as well as youtube.com/joyclicks for the video version of Excelsior. All of our archived Summer Game Fest reactions, discussions, debriefs, you can also find there if you care about gaming. You can also check out this show, Excelsior, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, your podcast service of choice. Just look up Excelsior, Marvel's Avengers Podcast, or JoyClicks. You will find it. If you enjoy the show, rating and reviewing is a quick way to help us out. Leave a quick blurb, hit a 5-star rating to help us reach more people and show your appreciation. Helps us out a ton. You can also help us out by going to patreon.com/joyclicks and support us monetarily at the $1 and $5 tiers. $5 will give you producer credit on every show we produce, like Aaron Easton and Jose Garcia. So thank you very much. And that is another week of Excelsior. Next week, presumably no Avengers news. But I'm excited to talk about Ms. Marvel again.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, each week.
hell yeah. But until then, Excelsior.
Excelsior.